European Central Bank President Christine Lagarde told Euronews in an exclusive interview that she is not a candidate for the upcoming French elections. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz said the United States has approved the sale of long-range Tomahawk cruise missiles to Germany. At least 28 people were killed after a fire tore through a multi-story shoe factory in eastern China on Thursday. European Central Bank President Christine Lagarde told Euronews in an exclusive interview that she is not a candidate for the upcoming French elections. Earlier in her career, Lagarde headed the French finance ministry under former President Nicolas Sarkozy. She became the first woman to lead a G7 economy and guided France through the 2008 financial crisis. Last week, Lagarde told French media that a strong European voice must be heard in the election and did not rule out leaving the ECB before October 2027. Lagarde now told Euronews that while she is not a candidate, she would continue championing European ideals.
I'm not a candidate for anything, but I'm very keen that Europe is protected, that Europe is the framework within which member states operate, including France.
Lagarde's comments come in the wake of new developments in the French presidential election. This week, National Rally leader Marine Le Pen said she still intends to run for president despite her conviction for embezzling EU funds. Le Pen has long criticized the European institutions for their supranational powers and has instead advocated for a return to a Europe of nations. Lagarde, on the contrary, has been an advocate of deeper European integration. Speaking to Euronews, the ECB president addressed one of the bloc's most divisive issues, that of Spain's proposal for joint borrowing.
But it's pretty obvious that we also need to have a European asset which can, parallel with the US Treasury bonds, for instance. How we go about it, how the moral hazard is addressed, how it's allocated in terms of results to be decided. And I think it's great that a country like Spain, for instance, makes a proposal.
And finally, Lagarde said any debate in Europe must be held with the aim of reaching a consensus among all 27 member states, rather than what she described as a, quote, over my dead body mindset.
There is an opportunity to push for a new mechanism for EU joint borrowing as the bloc seeks to strengthen the euro's international role, Spanish Finance Minister Carlos Cuerpo told Euronews. With the United States resuming hostilities with Iran, the implications for Europe have returned to the top of the EU's agenda. Against a backdrop of heightened geopolitical uncertainty, the search for safe assets has become an increasing priority. In parallel, the EU is striving to give the euro an international role as a global reserve currency.
I think there's a good window of opportunity to put that proposal forward now. We've been having discussions on the international role of the euro over the past few months, with very good contributions on the fact that we need a safe asset.
Spain distributed a paper containing a detailed proposal on a new EU common borrowing mechanism called European Sovereign Facility. Annual issuance would reach 850 billion euros if all 27 member states, the European Stability Mechanism and the European Financial Stability Facility participated, enabling the EU to build a 5 trillion euros stock of joint debt within 5 years. However, Spain will have to win over countries that are strongly opposed to any kind of joint borrowing. Several Nordic countries, Germany and the Netherlands, are staunchly against taking any further joint debt.
The European Parliament and EU governments are entering the final phase of negotiations on the digital euro after a vote in Strasbourg on Thursday. EU lawmakers are now ready to begin negotiations with member state governments on how the digital euro will work. The digital euro would be an electronic form of central bank money issued and backed by the European Central Bank. It is intended to complement cash and existing banking services rather than replace them. The ECB would provide the underlying infrastructure, while commercial banks and payment service providers would offer digital euro services to customers. According to sources involved in the negotiations, the most delicate issue will be agreeing on the so-called compensation model. That means deciding which financial institutions should be compensated, how much they should receive, and how the payment should be made for providing digital euro services.
The United States has approved the sale of long-range Tomahawk cruise missiles to Germany. That's according to German Chancellor Friedrich Merz. So far, there are no European-made alternatives with similar range and strike capabilities. This leaves Germany as well as other EU countries dependent on the US. Merz, however, said Europe is working to develop its own.
Wir haben zudem am Rande des NATO-Treffens in Ankara mit der amerikanischen Regierung vereinbart, dass amerikanische Tomahawk-Raketen von uns erworben und in Deutschland stationiert werden. Wir schließen damit eine wichtige strategische Lücke in unserer Verteidigung und wir werden gleichzeitig daran arbeiten, eigene europäische Systeme zu entwickeln und in Europa zu stationieren.
Germany considers long-range cruise missiles as a key part of its deterrence strategy against Russia. The missiles are mainly launched from submarines and warships and can travel more than 1,600 kilometers. Merz did not say when he expected the Tomahawks to be delivered, and the number of missiles acquired would remain classified.
Unions have warned that Volkswagen's managing risks a major conflict with workers as the struggling German car giant thrashes out what could be the biggest ever restructuring in the global car industry. Workers staged protests outside factories in Germany on Thursday over the carmaker's reported plans to cut up to 100,000 jobs and close 4 factories. This would account for 16% of the company's workforce worldwide. Europe's biggest carmaker is under pressure from US tariffs, weaker profit margins on electric vehicles, and above all, fierce competition in China. Volkswagen, whose 10 brands range from Seat to Porsche, is already cutting 50,000 jobs in Germany by 2030. Those cuts were agreed with unions at the end of 2024, alongside a pledge to avoid plant closures in Germany until at least the end of the decade.
A law allowing scanning of online communications meant to detect child sexual abuse material has been amended by MEPs to protect users' privacy. The European Parliament adopted on Thursday amendments excluding the likes of WhatsApp from a controversial temporary regime that allows electronic communication services to put voluntary measures in place to detect child sexual abuse material. MEPs want to exclude communication services applying end-to-end encryption from the scope of the law, which would force platforms such as WhatsApp and Messenger to no longer be able to take voluntary measures derogating from EU e-privacy rules to identify users suspected of sharing child sexual abuse material. End-to-end encryption is a technology to secure electronic communications in such a way that only the receiver and the sender can decode the content of the messages. The temporary regime has been dubbed as chat control by its critics due to its privacy implications, while its supporters consider it crucial to protect minors' rights and combat the dissemination of child pornography. The vote on the amendments was extremely tight and showed a deep split among the Parliament's political groups and internal fractures within some of them. An unusual alignment of liberal, radical left and far-right parties supported the changes, outnumbering the 2 largest political forces, the EPP and the centre-left Socialists and Democrats.
At least 28 people were killed after a fire tore through a shoe factory in eastern China on Thursday, state media reported. Footage shared by state television showed firefighters dousing the facade in the interior of the large multi-story building as thick black smoke poured out. People could be seen taking refuge near the windows and on the roof of the building while the blaze tore through the lower floors. Hours after the fire broke out at the factory, there were fears that people were still trapped inside the building. Chinese President Xi Jinping said that the cause of the accident must be identified as soon as possible and that those responsible should be held accountable. In November, China launched a campaign against fire hazards in high-rise buildings after a blaze tore through a residential complex in Hong Kong. A month later, a fire in a residential building in southern China's Guangdong province killed 12 people.
capacities and functionality that they've lost. So for patients like ALS, stroke, spinal cord injuries, they lose the capacity to communicate, to speak, or to move. And in Ability Neurotech, with a brain implant, meaning that device, we implant it in the brain, we record brain functions that are completely intact, we extract this information out, and with really unique AI capacities, we can reconstruct what they were intending to do.
We've created AI for Good in 2017, and if you think about it, that's an eternity in terms of AI years, right? Because AI is moving so fast. I think we're now entering what I would call a zero-click world, where AI agents are not waiting for our prompts, but they're actually acting on our behalf autonomously. And then looking at the more physical manifestation of AI in the form of advanced robotics, autonomous mobility, brain-computer interfaces, and even space computing.